Welcome. This ESOL training is for teachers who teach at least one ESOL student in Putnam County. The primary purpose of this training is to help you better understand how to use the resources that you have in your purple ESOL folder, which you should have in front of you now. It looks something like this. For this training, you will need your purple ESOL teacher folder. You will also probably want to have a pen or pencil and paper to jot down some notes and questions you might have as the training continues. And I would also strongly recommend a highlighter to highlight your students' names and information as we go through the presentation. First off, I would like to clarify the acronyms ESOL and ELL, which are sometimes used interchangeably. So to clarify for those who may be confused, ESOL refers to the program English for Speakers of Other Languages, and ELL refers to the students in ESOL, English Language Learners. You may also sometimes hear the terms EL, or simply English Learners. However, the term ESL, or English as a Second Language, has fallen out of use, as for some multilingual students, English is not a second language, but rather a third or a fourth. In the annual Title III handbook, the Georgia Department of Education clearly emphasizes the role of mainstream teachers in the language education of ELLs. Namely, all teachers function as language teachers when ELs are enrolled in their classes. This means that you are responsible for planning and providing appropriate differentiation so that the ESOL students in your class are not only able to comprehend the content, but also able to grow in their language knowledge and skills. That is a tall order, I know. That is why we have provided you with numerous tools in your purple folders to help you achieve this goal. As you look at your purple ESOL folder, you will see the following resources. There is an access score report for each student that you teach, can-do charts for your grade levels, current copies of students' accommodations, a teacher section and FAQ section from the district ESOL handbook, and sometimes there may also be some other supplemental materials that have been provided, or your ESOL teacher may provide you with materials throughout the year for you to add to your folder. The first thing that we would like to look at are the access score reports. The access score reports are individualized for each student and show that student's results from their most recent access test. The access test is a state test that all ELLs take every year in February. The access shows students' proficiency levels in the 4 language domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. It also shows various composite scores like oral language, which is a composite of listening and speaking, literacy, composite of reading and writing, comprehension, a composite of reading and listening, and an overall score that determines whether or not a student is eligible to exit the ESOL program in a given year. For those of you who are already familiar with these reports, please note that beginning in 2017, the scoring scale has changed to reflect the increased rigor of the Common Core curriculum. As a result, many student scores actually decreased from the 2016 access to the 2017 access. This is completely normal. The new scoring scale also affects how we interpret student scores. When looking at student scores in each domain, you can use this chart as a rough guide in interpreting where a student falls in terms of English proficiency. So for example, if a student scores below a 2.5 in any given domain, that student would be considered a beginner in that area. from 2.5 to 3.5 would be at an intermediate level. So this would be a student that maybe you could understand, but there are obvious challenges to their being able to participate in the classroom. From 3.6 to 4.3, you're going to have a more advanced student. This student is probably not going to have too much trouble as far as their ability to participate in your classroom, but on an academic level may still struggle. And then at 4.3 and above, that student is considered proficient or should be somewhat close to their regular English-speaking peers. The ones that you'll want to especially look out for, of course, are those beginner ones. And that's going to be ones that you're going to have the most trouble communicating with and are going to require the most differentiation and accommodations. At this point, you may want to pause this video and take a few moments to review your students' individual access reports and note their particular strengths and weaknesses. The next thing that we would like to look at together are the can-do charts. The can-do charts are designed to help you apply the information from your students' access reports in a more practical way. There are 4 can-do charts in your folders, 1 for each domain. You will see the domain listed here in the top left of the chart. For each level, 1 through 6, there is a list of the types of activities that a student can do at that level in the given domain. So for example, at a level 3 in speaking, a student should be able to express time through multiple tenses, so past tense, future tense, conditional tense. They should also be able to retell or rephrase ideas in their own words, give brief oral presentations, state their opinions, connect ideas using transitions like but, then, therefore, etc. Use different registers inside and outside the classroom, so start to use more familiar language with their friends and more formal language in the classroom. Be able to state the main ideas with some supporting details and ask for clarification, so be able to ask for help. You'll notice that this asking for clarification, asking for help, doesn't come into play until level 3. So if you have a level 2 or a level 1 student, they may not be able to tell you when they need additional help or clarification on a particular content topic. Now, please note that these are can-do charts, not can't-do charts. Students continue to develop and grow in their language skills throughout the year. So let's say we have a student, Joey, who is at a level 3 in speaking. But you notice that he's starting to paraphrase and summarize ideas presented orally. He's able to pretty well defend his point of view and explain outcomes and compare and contrast different concepts. Once you've started to notice this in Joey, and you notice that in him consistently, it's probably safe to assume that he is now at a level 4, and you can adjust your differentiation strategies accordingly. In that sense, these charts can also be used diagnostically to assess where a student is at now. But until you see evidence to the contrary, go ahead and assume that the student is at the level where they are indicated on your sheet. Each page lists the students by their access scores and indicates which of the 6 levels that student falls into for each given domain. Please take a moment now to pause the video and highlight your students' names on the chart so it is easy for you to see at a glance where they are. Now that you've highlighted your students' names, what are some practical ways that we can use these can-do charts? One of the first things you can do is use it to inform your grouping strategies. As you're deciding how to pair or group students for projects or for different classroom activities, you may want to think about how you can pair your ESOL students the best way for a given activity. For example, you may want to pair them with a more competent peer that can help them with the activity. Or you may want to group them with similar students for more targeted instruction. You can also use the can-do charts to evaluate your lesson plans and think about the differentiation needs that will go along with it. When making your lesson plans, think about these questions. How will this lesson work for my ESOL student? Is this activity within their language ability level? If not, what can I do to make it more accessible for them? If you find yourself getting stuck on that last part, try sharing your lesson plans with your ESOL teacher and asking for ideas on how best to differentiate. You can also, on the one hand, you can look at your current lesson plans and use the can-dos to evaluate what will need to be adapted for your ELLs. However, an alternate approach would be to start the lesson plan with your ELL in mind at the beginning. Use the can-dos as a springboard in planning the types of tasks that will be within a student's ability range, but will also allow them to demonstrate their content knowledge in a meaningful way. Again, if you need help in this area, please talk with your ESOL teacher about the content you need to teach or evaluate, and what kinds of activities would apply to your specific content needs. Following the can-do charts, you will also see in your folders individual accommodation sheets for each of your students. You should either have an IAF, an initial accommodations form, or a TPC, a testing participation committee form for each student that you teach. The difference between an IAF and a TPC is that an IAF is a temporary placeholder for new students until the more formal TPC meeting can be held. Only the TPC is sufficient documentation for purposes of accommodations on Georgia milestones. However, either form is considered sufficient documentation for all local assessments, including tests, quizzes, benchmarks, map tests, and other things. Please note that accommodations forms, whether an IAF or a TPC, are legally binding, just like an IEP, and applied to all kinds of assessments. Some of you may have some questions about, what if I don't understand a student's accommodations? Or what if I disagree and I think they need more accommodations or less accommodations than what is indicated? Or what if I want to offer their accommodations, but based on my classroom situation, I just can't? If any of these scenarios applies to you, please talk to your school's ESOL teacher right away. State law requires that a student's accommodations plan be applied consistently. That means in every class, for every assessment, every time. If you have a question or problem about a student's accommodations, please let the ESOL teacher know ASAP so that issue can be addressed in a timely manner. To reiterate, please never change a student's testing accommodations or allow a student to test without their appropriate accommodations. To do so is considered a testing violation and will invalidate the student's test. If a student refuses their accommodations, for example, refusing to go out with a small group for read aloud, please document the incident and report it to the ESOL teacher immediately. Next is the teacher section of our district ESOL handbook. It's entitled ELLs in the Mainstream Classroom. This section has been specifically designed with your needs in mind. It has a wealth of information that will help you to be a more effective teacher for your ELLs. I am not going to go through each section in detail on this video, but I do want to highlight a few things. So please follow along with me in your purple folder. First, in the section that's entitled Role/Responsibilities of Classroom Teachers, please note the numbered list at the bottom that lists the responsibilities of mainstream teachers in regards to their ESOL students. Number 1, be familiar with the EL's language levels and linguistic strengths and weaknesses. Again, the Access Score report sheet and the Can-Do report sheets will help you to understand this responsibility. Number 2, plan specific and strategic differentiation appropriate to students' language abilities. While the primary responsibility of differentiating falls on the teacher making the lesson plans, that would be you, You can certainly ask for help from your ESOL teacher. If you are going to ask for help, please be specific. Tell them exactly what kinds of activities you're hoping to differentiate or what kind of content you're trying to teach so that the teacher can more effectively help you plan and strategize. Also, number 3, ensure that the accommodations in students' IAF or TPC are consistently followed. Please, please, please make sure that students are receiving their appropriate accommodations each and every time they test in your class. Also, number 4, consult the school's ESOL teacher with any questions or concerns regarding the ELs in your classroom. At any time, for any reason, if you're not comfortable with what's going on with your ESOL student, please talk to the ESOL teacher right away. Don't wait until it becomes a bigger problem. Act now. Also, let's skipping on down to classroom environment and teaching strategies, which are the next 2 sections. These 2 sections are really for all teachers of ELLs. There are some great tips in here. I'm not going to read them all, but there's some great tips in here on how to make the classroom a positive language learning environment and some teaching strategies that are essential for ELLs, but will also be extremely beneficial for all of your students. If you find that you have a newcomer or a non-English speaker, someone that would be considered maybe a beginner on the access report, then you would definitely want to take a close look at the newcomer tips and newcomer activities, which are the next 2 sections. These strategies are specific to newcomers and will help you to make the transition successful. The next section, ESOL technology, let you know some of our ESOL department responsibilities towards our appropriate technology use. I do have a limited number of iPads and some other kinds of technology that you can check out if you feel like it would benefit your students in your classroom. On the way down to additional services and resources, I do want to point out some great websites and other things that you can use to help you with your ESOL students. You'll see that we have BrainPop, BrainPop Junior, and BrainPop Espanol, and we also have something called BrainPop ESL. And you have in there the updated password and username for those sites. Those websites are very useful because they have short videos and also quizzes and other things that go with them on a variety of topics. BrainPop Espanol has the same videos, or almost all the same videos, as the regular BrainPop site, except they're in Spanish and the resources are also in Spanish. BrainPop ESL is a little bit different, and that one is more geared towards actual English language learning. That's something that a student might want to try independently, but it's probably not going to align with your content as much as the BrainPop or BrainPop Espanol will. You can also use Google Translate to help you when in a pinch, whenever you cannot communicate with a student. While it's not great for long passages of text, for short words and phrases, it can be extremely helpful. If you're interested in learning another language yourself or in helping your students to learn English, the Duolingo app and website is a free app that is wonderful and is very helpful especially for older students. To be able to use the app, students must be able to read and write in their native language. So be careful and make sure that that applies to your student before recommending it. Also, you can talk to your media specialist about other dual language books and resources that we have. And please note that free tutoring is available for all ESOL and monitored students. If you will let your ESOL teacher know that you have a student in need of tutoring, we will provide a tutor and transportation as needed. Please contact your teacher to request tutoring for a student. Also, we have translation services that apply to all sorts of homeschool communication, whether you're sending home a letter, need to call a parent, or need to meet with a parent in person, or if you want to translate your classroom materials, your syllabus, your notes, your handouts. Monique Dennis is our translator for Spanish and can help you with that. Please give her plenty of notice if you're going to have her translating some written work, because it takes her about a 3-day turnaround to get things back. So please give her plenty of notice to get your things translated. And if you are going to need to schedule a meeting or something with a parent that does not speak any English, you will probably want to contact Monique first and have her set up the meeting so that there's no miscommunication about the where and when. The last section that I want to go over with you today is the FAQ section. These are questions that are frequently asked of ESOL teachers by mainstream classroom teachers. Again, while I'm not going to read through every question, I do want to point out that questions 3 through 6 have been recently updated. So please pay attention to these numbers, especially if you are familiar with this section from last year, because the answers and questions there have been updated since last year. This concludes the ESOL training video. As always, if you have any further questions or concerns, please contact your school's ESOL teacher. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Adios.